name is David29Sunset, and this is the Kids Popcorn Podcast, where we talk to interesting people about movies they watched as kids and kids' movies they find interesting as adults. For this episode, my guest is Cody Morris. Cody is an elected port commissioner in Hoodsport, Washington, a town on the Olympic Peninsula. He's also a musician, and he is owner of Potlatch Brewing, which has a tasting room and beer garden in Hoodsport. Thank you for being here, Cody.
Thanks for having me.
So I have to ask, we talked about this just a little bit briefly before you came on, but tell me a little bit more about being an elected port commissioner. Like, what is the very basic thumbnail sketch of what an elected port commissioner in your neck of the woods does?
Well, a lot of Western states created these things called port districts, and they were sort of a byproduct of sort of the New Deal era of trying to do economic revitalization. And they're more commonly understood as also the governing bodies of like major airports or big ports, right? So like you have like the Port of Seattle or the Port of Tacoma up here in Washington. But in a lot of smaller communities, they do kind of serve as a secondary layer of governing, basically a governance that for the most part is tasked with promoting economic well-being of the area. So in our town's so small, we're not even actually technically a town. We're a census designated area. So the port really does actually work as sort of the executive for our community. So in many ways, I'm sort of like a quasi-mayor. There's two other port commissioners. And for us, we primarily have a public disc golf course. We have a little public hiking trail. We're currently working on building a mountain biking and pump track. But my main focus, because our port is really compartmentalized, I'm in charge of the public dock. And the public dock is obviously used by the public, but we're also right next to the Skokomish Nation, and they use it during their commercial salmon season.
So I took a look at the Wikipedia page for Hoodsport and saw, like you said, it's small. I think that that page, it could be wrong and outdated, says there's something like under 500 people live in the census designated area.
Yeah.
Have you always lived in a rural area? Is this where you've always lived? Did you grow up there?
No, I was rustified. I grew up in Seattle. So I grew up right smack in the middle of the city. Spent most of my life there. Moved to Olympia to go to the Evergreen State College. Moved back to Seattle. Worked in the beer industry there for decades, I guess. And eventually I moved out here because my parents had moved out here and were starting to get a little on the older side, as parents do. And so I came out to kind of help them. And then while I was out here, I noticed there was no breweries in this county, and there's a pretty robust summer tourism from being right next to the Olympic National Park. So I decided to try brewing out in a rural community rather than the sort of ever-crushing environment that is Seattle, because it's Seattle's, as people know, it's very expensive. So being able to kind of go back to a more mellow pace is really nice, and it's given me just a lot more free time to read. Started playing music again, which I took a very long break from doing. And then I also really enjoy watching movies, especially once the winter comes and the sun's setting at 4. So
where is the nearest movie theater to you?
So the nearest movie theater is actually a drive-in, which is pretty fun. They unfortunately don't do a lot of showings in the winter, so it's kind of a nightmare because in the summer the sun doesn't really set till about 10. So the actual movies don't really start till about 10:30. And I'm not particularly young, so the prospect of watching a movie and getting home at 2 a.m. because they do double features is a little intimidating. There is a very small cinema in Shelton, which is the kind of big town in this county. I've only seen a couple movies there. Mostly, most of my movies I just watch at home with a DVD that I'll borrow from the library. Or I will get down to Olympia to the Capitol Theater because they do a lot of kind of more artsy releases. And then when the big blockbusters come, there is a IMAX style theater also in Olympia, so I'll go down to that.
Gotcha. Yeah, our household very much big time library folks. Like we're in San Francisco, so it's the public library system. Just about any movie you can think of, they'll have a copy, whether it's DVD or Blu-ray, let alone Canopy streaming that way. And so, but I've also been fascinated to hear from people in other parts of the country, not as big a city. Like, do you feel that your library meets your needs, or is it one of those things where you say to yourself, well, I have to think about it in a different way?
Not as much, because we're really lucky that our library is part of a multi-county library system. And so it's actually really robust. I'm pretty shocked by how fast they get releases. There's somebody who's ordering there that loves the Criterion Collection. So, like, I just watched the new remastered Sorcerer last week. And great movie, though. I had never seen it before. And that movie was have you seen that one?
I have not.
It's really weird. So the name is Sorcerer, so you're going to think it's like a magic movie. But it's just this very gritty tale of some guys trying to transport decaying dynamite in these hodgepodge trucks through like insane rural Mexico. And it is one of the most suspenseful movies I've seen in a really long time. It was like, I mean, really, it was a great sort of late 70s action thriller that really, I mean, just the level of tension that the camera work was able to do, especially with these trucks that are, they were basically, like I said, hodgepodge, and they're going over these like crazy roads, and they've already established the stakes that this is like dynamite that if you sneeze on it, it explodes. So it was a really great, gritty, really high tension movie.
Thanks for establishing like how your movie habits kind of are now. But when you think back to your childhood, do you think that you watched more movies, or about the same or fewer movies than other kids in your circles?
I definitely watched a lot of movies. My dad is, I mean, he was literally born in Hollywood, California. And his grandfather was a carpenter for the Hollywood systems back in the day. And so I was raised watching a lot of movies. I mean, we would go see movies pretty often. A lot of times and I think they still exist, but at the time I was growing up in Seattle, there was a lot of those second run theaters. And so, I would go to these theaters that, they were like $1 to go see them. And so I watched a lot of those. And then as a kid, my dad used to be really into doing these like themed marathons. So we'd like go to the little video rental store, and he would be like, all right, we're gonna watch like 3 Charlton Heston movies in a row, or we do like Schwarzenegger movies. My dad was always more of like a action sci-fi guy, which I some of the action movies I still enjoy. I do really love the weirdness of the 70s and 60s sci-fis. I just think watching people's interpretations of the future is always fascinating. And I love sets that have way too many buttons. I just think there's something incredibly charming about a bazillion buttons all flickering and whatnot. But so, yeah, we watched a lot of movies. And yeah, I would say I was definitely like a movie kid. It never really dawned on me that I was like super, like I was probably watching more movies than my peers. But yeah, as I got older, I've realized like, I did watch a lot of movies as a kid. And with my wife, we've been kind of getting back into watching movies, and I've been like watching these ones that I remember watching as a kid. And my wife's always kind of shocked by some of the stuff my parents let me watch. But I don't know, they were very, my parents are both, big admirers of art. And so they very much are like, well, you might not necessarily, this might offend your sensibilities, or you might make you uncomfortable, but, this is somebody's expression, and oftentimes people's expressions and thoughts can be uncomfortable or weird, and you just kind of have to power through it and hopefully glean something from it.
So what was the first movie that you remember seeing?
I feel like the first one I remember actually going to see in a theater was either the Star Trek. I think it's 4, the one with the whales with the time travel, which my dad was a giant Star Trek guy, or another one I really vividly remember seeing as a pretty small child was seeing Fantasia when they did like a big re-release of it. And I did always like those animated Disney movies quite a bit as a kid.
Earth is on the edge of destruction.
We cannot survive unless a way can be found to respond to the probe.
The key to saving the future
Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth.
can be found only in the past.
We're going to attempt time travel. Sulu, take us home.
For Star Trek, like you'd mentioned earlier that you were really into like big rooms with big buttons, lots of buttons and stuff like that, and also the sci-fi of the 60s and 70s. One of the things I often think about when I watch movies of a previous generation is trying to put myself in the mindset of someone who's trying to imagine the future, and then thinking about, well, how do I think about the future, my future? How will that be viewed in a certain way? Like, does that sort of resonate with the way that why you're kind of attracted to those sorts of movies?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think. I mean, one of the things I think a fundamental truth is whatever we're saying about the future in fiction is us just processing the present. And I mean, obviously, you run into goofy things of like, they time travel, or there's something in the future and everybody's wearing business suits. And you look nowadays and like business suits feel very out of place. So that's something like nobody really got, other than, I mean, I suppose some of the movies got into the idea of track suits being a more common apparel. And obviously like leisure wear is pretty common these days. But yeah, I mean, I do, again, I mean, I think there's this kind of tension when you do sci-fi is you can't, I mean, beyond the fact that you can't actually predict what's going to happen in the future, you are kind of stuck with the remnants of what's around you to assemble a story that makes sense. And so you're always in this kind of, it's not quite a contradiction, but it's always this sort of, maybe I guess a paradox that in telling a story about the future, you have to only use the objects of the present, because one, we don't know what the future is, but again, you don't have those symbols or signs that somebody in the present will understand.
I'm not completely up on Star Trek. I was much more of a Star Wars kid. But for Star Trek, if you've seen multiple iterations of the TV show and the movies, what I do understand about it is it's explicitly an optimistic series, an optimistic property, if you will. Do you think that you got that as a kid, or was it very much just the adventure type stuff?
No, I definitely think there is a sense of optimism that I get from it. And it's, it is really interesting comparing like the original Star Trek to the Next Generation, because that had two very different concepts of an optimistic future. I wouldn't say that Star Trek, the original series, was like very like pro-war or pro-power or like the articulation of power, but it definitely had some more kind of militaristic undertones, whereas and a lot of times the conflict was settled with a fight. Whereas Next Generation was very much a show where all the conflicts just come down to either a miscommunication or a technical problem that just was kind of not observed, and then they troubleshoot it. I mean, almost every single episode of Next Generation, it is resolved through thoughtful deliberation, and like at the end, like there isn't really any like meaningful conflicts outside of like the Borg episodes, which, you know, I think at some point the studios kind of applied pressure. They're like, all right, guys, this is starting to get a little stale. Like, this is starting to really feel like stories you tell kindergartners to stop like biting each other. But yeah, and so I do think it gave me and continues to give me a optimistic perspective. But I think ultimately what I do enjoy about it a lot is that it does have a vision that most conflict does come from just misunderstandings. And I think that's a really important way to go through life, just on an interpersonal level. I have not really been able to get into the recent reboots of Star Trek because they tend to try to take things in this sort of gritty seriousness that I think lacks the sort of bouncy, cheesy goofiness that really was the spirit of the show. I mean, you know, even Next Generation, which tried to take itself very seriously, still had a lot of very, very goofy elements. And, you know, like Deep Space Nine, which is definitely my favorite series. And if you're not a Star Trek person, I really do recommend watching Deep Space Nine. It's great. But yeah, there are like way too many episodes about baseball, which I love, but I understand is like the most frustrating thing to non-baseball people. And they have these like horrible story arc about a hologram that is like a early 40s lounge singer, and it's interminable. It's embarrassing.
So thinking back after those first few movies that you saw, what was your first favorite movie that you remember having?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say, but I think like probably like my first like legit is like, oh, this movie's awesome, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, the 1990 version,
yeah.
with Shredder, and like, and it's like the foot is not just. Oh, sorry, I'm getting too deep into the lore here. The foot, it's not just the Foot Clan; it's a whole bunch of kids who have been recruited into this crime wave in New York City in 1990.
Our family grows. The city itself will be our playground to use as we please. Rewarding ourselves and punishing our enemies.
We've been looking for you, Miss O'Neill.
There is a new enemy, freaks of nature. Together, we will punish these creatures.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat.
Yeah, it's great. And like the puppetry work is really good in it. Like it's a really solid movie. But I remember seeing that with some friends, you know, at the theater. And yeah, I mean, obviously, like any kid at that time, I was really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so seeing it as this like really realized thing was really, it was a incredible movie. I have to admit I have not seen it in probably 20 years or 30 years, so I don't know really how well it's held up. But but I do. I mean, I feel like I was somewhere. I think I was at a bar and they were just showing it on the TV, and I it's kind of embarrassing to say it, but having gone to the Evergreen State College, I do have 16 credits in puppetry. And so I really do enjoy practical effects and looking at how puppets are designed and how they're manipulated.
Today, what would you say your favorite kids movie is, thinking on it as an adult?
Well, you know, the funny one is, you know, I was thinking about that, and I mean, I've always enjoyed animation a lot. Animation to me just opens up so much possibility for storytelling and for being able to just do things. I mean, especially before CGI became very, very common. The imaginative things you could do with animation is really spectacular. And one of the things I also really cherish is craft and putting in that time and effort. And so, I mean, I think like one of my absolute favorite kids movies, and I've got a niece that's she's 10 now, so we can watch some kind of more sophisticated movies. And I have basically every Miyazaki movie on DVD, and so anytime she comes over, we watch one of those. And I think the one that I really, really just enjoy in terms of visual storytelling and the sort of the theme of it, and I think is like probably a really good one for kids right at this particular moment in history, is that I always butcher the Nausicaä, the Valley of the Winds, Nausicaä, the Valley of the Winds, which is a Miyazaki film from, I want to say, 1984.
All right, princess, ready to launch!
Tato, hold on!
All I do is worry when she's running around out there.
I'm Nausicaä. I'm from the Valley of the Wind.
Princess!
Soon this place too will be consumed by the toxic jungle.
But I don't understand. Who could have polluted the entire Earth?
The anger of the Om reflects the anger of the Earth.
Like most of his films, the protagonist is a younger, or maybe like a teenage girl, and she, of course, has a very cute animal friend. There's a lot of really neat flying scenes. The theme of it really is sort of about environments and how they're very easy to misunderstand, and that a lot of nature can be really frightening and scary when it's unknown, but once you start to actually understand the intricacies of it, you kind of see a shared life with it. And have you seen that one before?
I have not seen that one. I've seen several other of his movies. And like what you're saying just makes me think about Howl's Moving Castle and several other movies in the Studio Ghibli verse, as it were. And something that you said that just like, I think you were starting to hint at this, like really like is something that I enjoy about those movies is the care taken to each frame.
Yes.
that the each frame is drawn to be of interest. There's not just that. Yes, there are animation techniques that are used to save a little bit of time, but every frame is not just they're not produced in a way to skip through them. They're made to be seen.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that era of Japanese animation really, really was honing in on that. And the other sort of era of animation that really nails that are some of those earlier Disney ones. I mean, Bambi is one of the most insanely drawn pieces of art. I mean, it's from every detail of it is just breathtaking. And like, there's something that Bambi does insanely well is that all the animals are both anthropomorphized, but also really natural as the actual animals that they're depicting. So yeah, that's I think just in terms of like animation technique, just really a spectacular one. But the Valley of the Winds is neat because it's got I feel like it's a movie that like really kind of apply, like if you're kind of assuming that kids have this narrow, relatively narrow paths of like, these are for boys, these are for girls. What I really like about this film is that it has aesthetics that are both kind of boyish, but then also girlish at the same time. There's like some really cool mixing of kind of the stereotypes that we normally broadcast towards kids. And so I think it's a film that like all kids would enjoy. Again, the little furry friend is insanely cute. It's like this like squirrel fox thing. And the bug monsters are just so vividly drawn. I mean, they're sort of I guess, we're supposed to call them isopods, but I think we all call them either potato bugs, bill bugs, roly-polies. But they're sort of like that, but at this like gigantic scale. And one of the things that was interesting about that movie is when I first saw it as a kid, I didn't realize that it was the heavily edited one for Western audiences, which was called Warrior of the Winds. And it really kind of just was just an incredibly dumbed down version where it kind of took out all the not subplot. I mean, it's really the main text of it about sort of understanding the environment. And, basically they just cut it down to just the fight scenes, I guess. So.
Well, not having seen this movie, but having, again, like I said, having seen other movies from that era, and do you get the sense that you as a child would have been able to fully understand the unedited version, or was there some sort of impulse that kind of did make sense that the American mind has difficulty understanding the mode that these stories are being told in?
No, I mean, honestly, I feel like the weird Western edit actually really didn't explain the backstory of the antagonisms. So you were just like, okay, well, that's a bad guy. Whereas when you see the original version, it actually does explain why they're doing what they're doing. And so it just makes way more sense. And I guess to some audiences, you don't need an explanation as to why is the bad guy. But I would like to think most people are more sophisticated than that.
So we've talked about a lot of kids' movies that are not, say, right up the Disney alley, the mainstream big Disney movies that a lot of people have seen, and for many good reasons, beloved.
Yeah.
Are there any other movies that come to mind that you think of that do you think most kids today should see? Perhaps ones that it wouldn't occur to them that you really ought to see this. Because I think a lot about a movie like Inside Out. To me, is one of those movies. I hold it up as one of the best movies of the past 20 years, period. And it was made by a big studio. It had a huge budget. It had big stars in it. But it also had an incredible story, to my mind, that was very sensitively handled in a way that most big studio type movies don't get around to doing because they have different priorities for when they're telling a story. So are there movies that might not have that sort of backing to them that you might be able to recommend, or that just for whatever reason they don't have that kind of reputation in the broader culture?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're running into this with this project, is it does seem like for the most part there's not really like a indie kids movie scene. It does seem like they are generally either really well-funded, wonderful pieces of art. Like I do think a lot of the Pixar stuff is really great. WALL-E is probably one of my favorite movies. And again, like those, the Studio Ghibli stuff's really great for that as well. And then you get these kind of more cynical cash grabs, such as the Air Bud movies. Which I wouldn't really recommend them for anybody other than I suppose if you really want to overdraw metaphors about human beings and nature, you could maybe do that with one of those Air Bud movies with the evil scientist that kidnaps him to clone him. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'm trying to think because I mean, one of the things that I ran into as a kid was my parents weren't really into watching kids movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why I ended up watching a lot of movies that you would be described as like adult movies when I was a kid. And I didn't really see a lot of things that were like specifically tailored for kids. You know, like I do, and you know, it'd be interesting to rewatch it because we were at the show we just played. We had this very like hardcore metal band that was playing with us, and I don't know why, but well, we had a projector going, and we were showing the movie The Witch on the background for their show. And they were like, yeah, I don't know how it came up, but we started talking about the movie Homeward Bound.
Yes.
And they were like, you know, that movie really made me cry. And I was like, oh, you should put that on for the next time you do a show, you know, because you guys get some very emotional moments. And it'd be pretty fun to watch, like, you guys doing the blast beats and you're screaming about extreme sorrow and sadness. And then you got, like, the you know, Homeward Bound going on in the background. But I remember liking that movie along with Milo and Otis, but I feel like I get the two completely confused.
Definitely watched a lot of Milo and Otis when I was a kid and didn't realize any of the backstory about how it was made and how it was, I believe it was a Japanese production, and then they got Dudley Moore to do voices, to do the narration sort of stuff.
Milo was trouble from the very beginning. The first animal Milo met was Otis. "You're a strange-looking cat," Milo said. "Oh, I'm not a cat. I'm a dog." Really, deep down inside, we're all cats, right? No, deep down inside, I'm a dog. Nevertheless, Milo and Otis became best friends.
"We're going to take a walk outside today. Gonna see what we can find today."
My recollection of Milo and Otis specifically is that I was very fascinated by that movie, much more so than Homeward Bound, which I saw as like, oh, this is fluff. This is fluffy entertainment. Whereas Milo and Otis, for whatever reason, I saw that as like, oh, they're trying to tell me something here. They're showing an actual dog birth, you know, and things like that.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that's how I kind of recall it as well. I mean, I feel like maybe, yeah, because I feel like Homeward Bound, I mean, they just, it's like the three animals get lost and they have to like trek through the woods. And I mean, there's some little bit of like tension and suspense, but I feel like in Milo and Otis, there's like a couple like actual scary scenes of, of him having to like cross a bridge, or maybe it's a log or something.
I believe there's a bear makes an appearance.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to I might have to revisit those ones.
Well, Cody, thank you so much for coming on with me to talk about these movies and your childhood. Is there anything else that you want to plug to let us know about your activities, your work, anything that we should know?
Not too much. I have to admit, I'm always very bad at self-promotion. I have found as I get older and older, I am trying to do more things in the physical world. So it tends not to really translate that well with internet stuff. But at some point this winter, the band I'm in, we're going to record an album. So if people want spacey post-rock stuff, it's called Delimmer is the name of the band. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, and then, you know, if you're ever out in Washington, definitely visit Hoodsport. It's a lovely little town. It's just right on the water. We're famous for oysters if you're a fan of those. And there's a lot of really cool old growth forests around here. It's real pretty, and sometimes we even get the orca whales swimming through here.
My name is David 29 Sunset, and this is the Kids Popcorn Podcast. You can find more episodes and subscribe at popcorn.29sunset.com or wherever you get your podcasts.